Destiny 2 was supposed to be the new starting line, not the end. These are the words of Datto, one of Destiny's biggest YouTubers. Historically an optimist on the subject of the Destiny franchise's health, such an assertion from him, along with many others made in his video, Datto's Thoughts on Datto and the Future, feels as good as a nail in the coffin for Bungie and their looter shooter. The January video followed a string of other less than favourable words from content creators and news headlines, streamers like Luminosity all but abandoning the game, and the competitive PvP population reaching worryingly low levels, even lower than in the first game's prolonged content droughts. Harsh criticism has surrounded Bungie's approach to XP gains, microtransactions, balance patches and more. Is this backlash justified? Perhaps. A franchise as large as Destiny doesn't just fold for no reason, after all. A combination of a disappointing gameplay experience, lack of interaction between community and developer, and, as a result, a damaged and divided player base have led to a disaster for Bungie. A few hours with Destiny 2 reveals a clear change in Bungie's audience focus. RPG systems, like even in Destiny 1, are stripped down to the point of non-existence. Powerful exotic weapons don't have the punch they used to, and cooldowns on abilities like grenades and melees are greatly increased. This makes Destiny 2 a far more accessible game than its predecessor. Younger and more time-strapped players will have a much easier time here, not now having to worry about the opaque roll system, which would greatly affect the power of weapons and armor, nor the need to tweak subclass abilities to perfection. Nor either will they now have to worry about entering a PvP game and getting demolished by a weapon they'll never be able to get. Accessibility comes at a price though. Those RPG systems, they provided a groundwork on which to build unique and memorable loot, and allowed for far more customizable loadouts, something Destiny 2 sorely lacks. Meanwhile, the blanket nerfing of top-tier exotic weapons and abilities has eroded what the community calls hero moments, instances of a remarkable turnaround, be it in PvP or PvE. The overall result is a game that feels a bit homogenized, capped at a certain low point of interest that simply won't get you clamouring for more, a death knell for a live service game like Destiny. There are other missteps too. Writing has taken a nosedive.
Roar! I'm a big scary monster! Not when the ghost and his guardian are around. Oh no! You have defeated me! Ah!
The balance-friendly weapon system of kinetic energy power, in which all interesting weapons like rocket launchers and grenade launchers are confined to the power category, is universally hated and plays further into Destiny 2's homogenized feel. And some baffling design decisions like the inability to replay story missions should really have been ironed out in the early development process. Between all this, Destiny 2 just isn't something you want to play, whether you're hardcore or casual. And in a world of Monster Hunter worlds and warframes, what's the point in sticking it out? In these times, Destiny 2's uninteresting and flawed gameplay experience just isn't good enough to retain players, and, from a community perspective, Bungie certainly haven't done themselves any favours. All of Destiny 2's issues are inherently fixable. Indeed, the moment-to-moment gunplay, environments and sound are fantastic in typical Bungie fashion. The aspects that would have required huge effort to fix if broken are solid. The problems lie simply in progression, RPG systems, and a few numbers determining cooldowns. For many in the Destiny community, this is what makes the whole thing so frustrating. It doesn't feel like Bungie is listening. What looked like simple issues, the 3 of coins item not dropping the loot it's supposed to, or the aforementioned sluggish ability cooldown for example, take months to fix. The latter in particular had been flagged as early as the game's September launch, yet it was only in March with the Go Fast update that Bungie made any adjustments. Even when issues are fixed, players end up with this residual frustration, Destiny lore expert My Name is Bife said in a recent video. This frustration seems to have built up amongst the Destiny community over a period of 4 years, across content droughts, imbalanced weapons, and finally now, Destiny 2's gameplay experience. Bungie communicates the majority of the time through its This Week at Bungie articles. Now though, this simply isn't enough. Vague promises and a sprinkling of balance patches throughout the year are a fraction of what is needed to appease a community which, casual or hardcore, takes umbrage to the very core experience of Destiny 2. Not to mention that, next to the Warframe developers' now infamous "What do you want" dialogue with the community, Bungie's methods just come off as callous. What makes this even worse is the controversy Bungie has faced over the course of the last 6 months. Perhaps most famously, Bungie was caught in the act of secretly restricting players' XP gains, the system responsible for dishing out the game's paid loot boxes through gameplay. It wasn't a good look, and was met with headlines and angry opinion pieces from all sides of the gaming press. Amongst the community, XP Gate marked a turning point from dissatisfaction to feelings of betrayal and distrust. These persist today. While the XP restriction was hastily lifted, it wasn't the only incident which painted Bungie in a bad light. Their seasonal Dawning event, so soon after the loot box killing Star Wars Battlefront 2, was overly stingy, reliant almost entirely on the player paying to make it worthwhile. Hell, the loot box system in general has come under much fire for its all-encompassing nature. Cosmetic ships and sparrows, once earned through high-level activity or bought with non-premium currency Glimmer, are now almost completely tied to the paid loot box system. Perhaps most of all though, the source of the community's frustration and Destiny 2's problems in this regard comes from Bungie's lack of direction. Who is this game for? Recent measures, like the Masterwork system, which somewhat reintroduces the random roll system of Destiny 1, seem aimed at hardcore hobbyists. But then the aforementioned homogenization of Destiny 2 is a clear reach for the casual market. Destiny 2 doesn't tread the line that Super Smash Bros. Or Pokemon does with its appeal on separate levels to both hardcore and casual audiences. Fans, and you suspect Bungie themselves, don't know what this game is or where it's heading. They don't know if, in time, it's going to be for them, or move even further from where they want it. Why continue with Destiny 2 then, when they can pick up something more suited to their needs right now? Bungie's slow communication and actions, lack of direction, and betrayal of trust through shady XP and loot box adjustments has created a community which seems to actively resent the game they're playing. And that means, even if Bungie can get their game on track, they're going to have a hard time winning their players back. I mentioned previously Destiny 2's dwindling PvP population. It really is quite depressing. Under 50,000 accounts participated in the endgame Trials of the Nine mode on April the 20th, compared with almost 1 million at the game's launch. While some loss is inevitable, this extent is enormous. Elsewhere, the departure of key streamers like Luminosity from Destiny, as well as the consistent sub 5,000 average views on Twitch for the game, negate any competitive presence the Destiny franchise might have had. The Destiny subreddit celebrated its 500,000 subscriber milestone, again, when it dropped below it and moved back up. These are the quantified consequences of Bungie's poor communication, over-monetization, and misguided design decisions. Live services like Destiny are reliant on a healthy community, and, as many dead MMOs of the late 2000s can testify, once you're in the spiral of declining player population, it's hard to get out. A franchise that should have been going from strength to strength, after birthing one of the first successful live service games, now faces an enormous uphill battle. But perhaps there is still hope. After all, this is a studio that simply refuses to fail, who produced Halo's revolutionary console shooter formula in under a year, and the finest multiplayer shooter game with its sequel under similar pressures. How could, and how is Bungie working to save its game? Deeply flawed, but with much potential. In recent months, Bungie has made huge strides on the communication front. In development roadmaps in March and April, they specifically laid out changes and timeframes for them in response to community feedback. For example, an increased player inventory, another baffling oversight of Bungie's, is due on May the 8th, and movement speed and ability cooldowns received enhancements in the Go Fast update. There's also been a noticeable increase in the amount of direct communication between developer and player. It's not uncommon to see posts on the Destiny subreddit flared with Bungie replied these days, and key development figures like Chris Barrett have been much more active on Twitter in sharing progress on Destiny 2. Here are real, telling signs that Bungie is waking up to the responsibilities of developing a live service, and, with a bit of luck, this increased communication can lead to a better understanding of Destiny 2's future amongst players, and begin to rebuild the trust lost in the wake of XP Gate and money-grabbing seasonal events like the Dawning. The experience of playing Destiny 2 has improved notably too, and looks set to only get better with the release of the new Warmind expansion on May the 8th. As well as the aforementioned inventory and ability cooldown fixes, the promises of more unique and meaningful loot, the upcoming powerful weapon Redrix's Claymore, available for skilled PvP players, for example, and further improvements to endgame Nightfall strikes, which now allow for multiple levels of play thanks to challenge cards, bode well. These are all greatly pleasing changes to the hardcore hobbyist player base of Destiny, but Bungie still suffers from its lack of direction in its vision for the franchise. Indeed, these changes are alongside safe place patrol zones and fixed weapon rolls, as well as all of the other casual-friendly features introduced to allow Destiny 2 to reach new audiences, which show no signs of disappearing anytime soon. It's an impossible balancing act Bungie has to maintain with its one-size-fits-all approach, and, unfortunately, the developers' indecision around just who exactly Destiny 2 is for clearly still persists. And still, in spite of all these positive changes, the question remains, why persevere with Destiny 2? For hobbyists seeking loot, Monster Hunter World offers a more focused experience. For casual players looking for social interaction, Fortnite is unparalleled. Even when Bungie makes the changes that look set to greatly improve Destiny 2 on May the 8th and beyond, it still won't have that speciality, that unique selling point that its competitors have. Even if the Destiny franchise does settle on the hardcore or casual route and cultivates a more focused experience a few years from now, I worry if there'll be anyone left to play it. As the Twitch figures, YouTube videos and news articles show, Bungie's game is already on life support as it is. Other publishers have smelt blood in the water too. A game like Anthem could very well seize the small, damaged community that remains with Destiny 2. Perhaps, in fact, the nail in the coffin for the Destiny franchise wasn't Dato's words or community backlash, but the mere existence of Destiny 2 in the first place. A jack-of-all-trades, master of none that just isn't interesting enough to hold players, made by a studio with a deep-rooted communication issue that inflicted irreversible damage on its player base long before it tried to make amends. Are we looking at the end of the Destiny franchise? Well, it might have already happened.